guess I won't. It's good to see you.
Hello, angels. Say thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to see this. So if you can just say hi in the chat, that would be amazing. And then how do I see? So this is the Facebook chat?
Flick to the left.
Where?
That way.
That way. Okay. Awesome. Hello. Let's see who we have. We have Steed. Hello, Steed. Thank you for saying hi. Brett, Stephen. Hello, Stephen. Long time. Nice to see you. And I think we have Donna on Facebook. And we have Kitty Dragonfly on YouTube. I need this. I hear you, love. Donna from San Pedro. Beautiful Jane. Hi, Dave. Nice to see you. Let's see. We have Kitty 20 from Washington State. MJ Halo. Hi, Kitty. I hope things are well in Washington. Miriam. Hi, A&M. Hello, Miriam. Nice to see you in Florida. We have Denise. Hi there. Ulrike. Uli. Hi. Nice to see you. Ellie. Hello. You can't do that. Richard. Nice to see you. Sorry, he was wobbling the camera. Love you guys too. Love you, Mr. Richard Metz. KDB Willer from Alexandria, Virginia. Virginia is such a beautiful state, probably lovely here. There, Karen from Sydney. Hi, Karen. I wonder what time it is there, love. Thank you for joining. I think it's very late at night. Early in the morning. Good morning, Karen. Joanne, Corinne. I think it's the middle of the night in Sydney, so you get double brownie points for joining, Karen. Natalie Ambruso, hello. Lovely to see you. It's a little scary in Washington for the non-vaccinated, so sending much love and light to you, Kitty. And okay, so lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking about how to clear consciousness, how to stay clearer in these times. So Michael's, of course, a world expert on that subject. I would venture to say the best that I know. And Patricia. Hi, Patricia Kronheim. David and Patricia Kronheim here. Lovely to see you. Sending lots of love and light back to you. Cindy. Hi, Cindy, love. Nice to see you. Dave Wright. Mary Wright says hi, too. Hi there, beautifuls. Mary Jo. Hi. In Palm. I think that's in California. You can tell me if it's not. So we're going to be talking about, and we have Mystic. Hi, Aurora. We're going to be talking about, hi, Linda. We're going to be talking about, really how to stay clear, how to clear our consciousness so that we can be in a more of an authentic state during these times and not take on some of the craziness of the world going on. Hi, Mary Jo. And Renata, hello. So we'll call in the light. We'll start with calling in the light. If you have any questions along the way, please throw those in the chat. Either we're on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube all at once. So throw those in the chat and we'll do our best to get to those. Any questions about clearing your consciousness? And we'll talk about what that even means in a moment after we call in the light. So if you would, please just take in a deep breath and just reach up, stretch up. Let's get your body involved. Exhale. Deep breath in, breathe in the love. Exhale with some sound. Let it all go. Deep breath in, reach up into your soul, light streaming off your fingertips. Exhale with some sound and a shake. Shake it all out. Shake it all out. Movement is definitely a way to clear. As is breath. Deep breath in and let the next breath out with like a percussive sound. Another one. Beautiful. And now just Father, Mother, God, as we keep breathing in love and exhaling anything less than love, we just open into the light of the Holy Spirit, into the light of the Christ, asking that any imbalance, negativity, karma just be taken and transmuted perfectly and harmlessly. We open to the eminent spiritual presences with us, the great archangels, the silent ones, the traveler, the Christ, by whatever name you know, Spirit, that universal life force of love, call it forward now, call yourself forward into the awareness of it. And we just connect heart to heart with each one here now with us live and to watch later. We connect, feeling each heart present. And we just, with this next breath, we'll breathe in. And as you breathe in, be aware of everyone on this call breathing in as one with you. 1, 2, 3, breathe in. Breathe in love. Exhale, and that loving just amplifies, being aware of each one breathing in with you. Breathing love as one. Exhale, and that love amplifies through each of us, goes out and blesses our planet, because love is eternal and infinite. We ask all of this for the highest good. And we'll chant 3 Anahu, so just chant out loud into your space. Anahu is Sanskrit for evoking the empathy or the oneness of God. Thank you. And you can gently bring your consciousness back or continue traveling. So I just wanted to start really quick. So what we just did incorporated 3 or 4 elements of clearing our consciousness. Breath. Breath is so basic and takes us right into that pure essence of life, of really of God choosing us into life with each breath. So just if you experience yourself taking on things or being aware of the stress of your environment or someone else, breath is a great way to clear. So it's just breathe in love, exhale, let go of anything less. Sound is a great way to clear. Right? And then we did movement. We just did a little bit of movement. And of course you can do more vigorous movement, exercise, running, just running in place, just reaching up, stretching. Exhale, and just feeling yourself just letting go. And then of course we called in the light, so prayer and invocation, absolutely fantastic way to clear. And chanting, it can be a mantra, can be an affirmation, can be a tone, but that chanting starts to work into the unconscious, and also hearing the sound of it. The sound is a way of clearing, we can do phew, and allow that sound to clear our consciousness. So we just did several things all at once. And just throw an emoji up or in the chat if you don't feel right this moment just a little better than you did before we called in the light. So I see lots of emojis on Insta. Thank you. And hi, Talk Purpose and Silas, who just joined, and Steed. So just that intention to clear often brings us more into that clarity. And then I wanted to, yes, better, nice kitty. So wanted to, from Alaska, Renata, that's cool. So wanted to just give you another really quick thing to do, and then I'll let Michael take it away. So if you just take a moment and just scan your aura, and no, you don't have to know what you're doing. Your aura is the energetic field of light around your body. It can be photographed, it can certainly be sensed, it can be seen. So just scan your aura with your hands, your palms facing inward, and just be aware of where there's just a little glitch in the energy field, something which you no longer need, and just fling it out with your fingertips. And when you do that, it leaves your fingertips, it leaves and goes into the light the moment you fling it out. So sparkly fingers, right, Dave? So just scan your aura and just pull out what you no longer need. Don't worry, it's not going to go on your neighbor. Just scan it in the back, a lot around the belly, around that second, third chakra. Take it and pull it out and just fling it out. Right? Yeah, just fling it out. Deep breath. There you go. So that's also a really quick way to just clear your energy field. And then I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to give it over to Michael to talk about clearing. So, but while we have started in this, so taking and cutting the cords, you can borrow St. Michael's sword. You can borrow Joan of Arc's sword. You can borrow whomever sword you want and take and just cut the cords. You can be cutting the cords of the group despair going on. It can be if you feel some manipulation going on from somebody else, attachment. You're not cutting the loving. Absolutely not cutting the loving. Loving always persists, right? It's just cutting any kind of manipulation from another, any kind of attachment, any kind of taking on their upset, etc. So that is a very quick summary of a few ways to clear. And now, so if you have any questions about any of that, throw them in the chat. Anything about what I just talked about, we'll give you a moment, and then Michael is going to talk to us a little bit about. Can you start with kind of what clearing your consciousness? What does that mean?
Clearing your consciousness is basically a realignment of both intention, focus, and the life energy, or the energy within us, towards the greater self, towards our greater nature. And there's a saying, Lord, I'm keeping my eyes on you, following you, following you. So clearing is not as much a process of trying to find out all the stuff that might have a negative effect on us, as much as getting a really strong, clear focus upon the higher nature, the higher truth, the higher call. And then witnessing when our consciousness is pulled away from that, and then dealing with whatever would pull us away from that, and returning to that higher focus. And so it's not so much seeking out negativity as much it's really staying directed towards light, directed towards joy and loving, and then witnessing when something seems to be impeding that, and then dealing with it. And awareness is the greatest tool we have in dealing with that. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of I have a different conversation going on. So.
Well, go ahead and share your different conversation.
Well, the conversation that I was listening to was basically about this clearing, particularly in this time, the orientation of the world, and the orientation of the process of evolution on this planet has been very much a process where there are magnetic forces that are beyond our own individuation, our own consciousness, that are kind of compelling us to be driven to focus upon ourself and the survival of ourself, the expansion of ourself, the glorification of ourself, the enhancement of ourself, even in a way the greater realization of ourself. And over the last couple thousand years, there's been another opportunity that's being magnified for us, which is a force of spirit that is coming forth in a greater way than ever before, which is showing up in our lives as the undoer of ourself, as that which would free us from the demand of self-expansion, the demand of self-survival, the demand of all of that. Another way of saying it is it's almost like if we looked at our chakras and looked at them from the bottom of our feet and our knees and then the 7 chakras through the body and then up, the karmic orientation, the orientation has continually created an emphasis in us to answer the challenges and answer the questions of our existence very much as they affect those chakras, in particular the base chakra and up. So for example, Abraham Maslow created a beautiful psychological model, and sort of a pyramid of needs. And the base need, of course, would be survival, and then we'd move up, and then as we handled more and more of those base needs, we would eventually start to deal with the higher aspirations of our being, start to approach awakening, start to approach enlightenment. And so he suggested to us that if we handle all the other things first, then we would finally have room to get enlightenment. If all our needs were taken care of, if survival was taken care of, if our need for community, our need for togetherness, all those things were taken care of, then we would finally be free to approach our higher nature. And that sounds really good, and it's made a lot of sense, except when we are taking that approach, we're going in sort of in the opposite direction that it was suggested by Jesus when he said, "Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then all things will be added unto you." So he was suggesting, yes, you live in a world, and there are questions about being fed, and there's questions about being protected, and there's questions about will you be alone, all those different things. But instead of approaching life from the point of view that you need to handle all those things, and then finally when those things are handled, then you can see about you and God, he suggested, no, put God first, and the seeing about you, God, in first. Then when you handle that, that will automatically have a ripple effect that will create change and create balancing and create uplifting and fulfilling into those lower perspectives or those more primal choices. And so we are in an interesting time on this planet where the force of that calls us to the higher perspective is now so powerful and so powerfully being delivered into our world that the old way and the old momentum is seriously being challenged. Now, those things that would have reinforced that model of the hierarchy of needs, the first thing I do is got to make sure I'm fed and clothed, and make sure that my family's safe and the community's safe, and make sure that old way is now being challenged in a way that isn't unique here. So in this time in particular, when we're looking at clearing, one of the first things we can do is assess ourselves and watch our thinking in particular and our feelings and see, and my thoughts and my feelings being dominated by survivalistic concerns? Or is it being dominated by those things that we would say are more primal to the survival of this form? Now, of course, with climate change now happening and a lot of things going on, there's tremendous information coming our way that suggests we really should be worrying about our survival, and we really should be worrying about our communities, and we should be worried about will there still be a planet here for us to live on, and we really should be so concerned about that should dominate our focus. And I'm going to suggest to you, for the purposes of clearing, that's the entrapment. It's not that those things don't have a value to us or something that we would care about and put energy on. But if we let ourselves be drawn into sort of an endless concern for those things, and then therefore sort of an endless struggle in those areas, we're kind of feeding into that which would distract us, and we're kind of giving over to that which we want clearing from. So I'm going to suggest to you that witness that part of your consciousness that would start to frame your reality and frame your choices by how do I take care of myself in terms of survival, and how do I answer those more primal concerns, and surrender that. And surrender that to a higher perspective, which is informing you in every moment that everything is handled in God, and since God is all present, then everything is handled everywhere, and everything is handled for you. And so the clearing suggestion I have for you, more than anything else right now, is to come to the assumption of God's presence and the assumption of God's blessing being available to you all the time in service to this thing we call clearing, and to this purpose of awakening, this purpose of holding a focus that is a blessing to the earth, a blessing to our individuality, and a blessing to God's purpose, which is to awaken us to the presence of God and to the truth of God. Look at this as a time where we have more access to information than ever before, which can be quite a blessing, but it can also be quite a burden, because much of the information coming our way suggests the catastrophic nature of the moment, the catastrophic nature of the world around us and what's going on. And if we're caught in that, our energy will start to gravitate into our lower chakras. Our root chakra, the chakra in our belly button area, the chakra at the solar plexus. The concerns as the world is portraying to us is drawing us into those levels. And that's usually when we're doing clearing. Clearing is usually freeing ourselves from those things that would pull our focus and our energy into those lower chakras. So what I'm talking to you about right now is not as much a new technique, but I'm suggesting you another paradigm by which you can look at reality, look at yourself, look at what God is doing here and how you can partake in this and partake in that uplifting, which is the biggest key I'm offering you today in the clearing, is the uplifted focus. The more you can see reality as it is seen from spirit, the more you will automatically find clearing and automatically find the lifting away of negative influence, of negative preoccupation, and of the negative distortions. We're actually in a time now where there is more light coming into the planet than ever before. Now that light is having a cleansing effect or a surfacing effect in individual consciousness and also in the collective consciousness and even into the magnetic fields of the planet. So the good news is more light, and part of the challenge that goes with it is pushing up more opposition to that light. So I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm really encouraging you to understand that this higher opportunity begins for us by holding this higher perspective. If Jesus was correct and the kingdom of heaven is at hand, John Rogers is correct and the blessings already are, then our knowing of that and then our choosing to perceive reality from that truth makes us available to this greater force that will clear us and clear this planet and improve our lives and improve the experience of life on this planet.
Okay. And let us know if you have any questions. I see a lot of amens, and Steed wrote again, the assumption of God's presence. Beautiful. Stephen has a prayer emoji. A couple people had to jump off for class. I think this is probably answered for KDP, but she says, how are the points Michael making align with our current world events? I think you kind of answered that. KDP, just throw in the chat if you have further questions about that. But is there anything further you want to say that in terms of current world events?
Well, we could say it pretty basically. It's not just the current world events, it's the way the current world events are being portrayed and in a way amplified. I remember years ago watching footage of a riot in Israel, and there were youth throwing rocks and bottles, and it seemed so terrible, and it was being portrayed by the news as this big world event, and then inadvertently the camera person who was filming it shifted their camera around. I guess they weren't paying attention, and they just shifted it, and right next to where this people were throwing these rocks and bottles in this big riotous thing as it was being represented, there was a marketplace, and in the marketplace everybody's doing business as usual. And it was stunning to realize that if I just bought into what they're originally selling me, they wanted me to get excited, they wanted me to be scared, they wanted me to be revved up about this terrible rioting that was going on, and yet the people that actually lived there were going about their business. So there's always been things going on in this world, and yes, there are things going on that are calling our attention, and because of the media we have more access to that information than ever before. However, that more access to the information is also more access for us to lose our center and to go into catastrophic thinking and to go into panic and go into fear. And all those things activate the lower chakras in our body. So we have to witness and recognize that as much as the information can have value for us because it points us in a direction where the light is needed, perhaps action as well, we don't want to get entrapped into this obsessive worry, this obsessive sense of doom because there's so much going on that we don't know how to do anything about. We can always send light, we can always send prayers, and we can always see the world as it's seen from God, from the Spirit. And from that vantage point, things are going better than ever.
Kitty wants to know, where are you guys based? Los Angeles. We are in Pacific Palisades. What you're seeing behind us is Pacific Palisades. Do you do in-person workshops? Yes, we've done over 100, but then COVID, of course, has a little, what would I say, break in that, sabbatical. But we hope to go back to in-person soon. And actually, if anybody knows of any workshop spaces in LA, let me know. Tipster says, hello, everyone. Hi, Tipster. Hi, Mary Jo. She says, this perspective is so calming. I feel my solar plexus relax. Fantastic. That is the point of all this. Jane says, we can do this. Linda says, yes. I agree. We can do this. And looks like Helen joined, and a few more on Insta. Is there, something that everybody wants to ask you, so I'll ask you for them. How specifically can we clear negativity, the loyal forces of the opposition, which of course would love to vie for attention, our attention? Of course, you've answered that with the positive focus. But specifically, is there anything you can tell us, kind of a quick and dirty technique, easy technique to
Oh, dirty one.
clear?
Those are for later. honey.
I see. Clear negative energy fields.
The reason negativity has power over us and influence us over us is almost always because we give it that power and influence over us. And we give it because of the levels of identification and the level of attachment that we create. Attachment to our point of view, attachment to a paradigm of how things are going, identification with the story of life as we think it's so for us, the story of life as we think of it as our family, the story of life as we think of it for the community, the story of life as we think of it for the planet. Our attachment to our picturing or the way we frame reality is none of the negative power will come to visit. So when we do clearing, almost 95% of the time, the key thing in the clearing is figuring out why I'm attached, why I've identified with this. If I identify with my body, if I identify with my home, if I identify with my puppy, if I identify with even with my family, each and every one of those things.
Easy on the puppy thing. I just adopted a puppy. He's so cute. You guys will have to see him.
Yes.
But go ahead. But no, we can't. Puppies have to be off limits right
So
now.
attachment to puppies is other than attachment to puppies.
Other than attachment to puppies, right? Who's with me on that? I need to see some love in the chat there, right? We can be attached to puppies
So
or kitties.
the attachment, it really becomes the big problem with it when it becomes identification. So when we come into that identification, we place ourselves into attachment identification with the magnetic nature of reality, which is the world of karma, the world of time and space. When we free ourselves from that, we come back into the remembrance of the reality beyond time and space, to our soulic nature, to the nature of spirit itself. And the biggest difference between the spirit and the soul and the magnetic is the attachment level, the magnetism. So when we're getting free, we're freeing ourselves from the whole, the magnetic. Even karma can be understood as a magnetic process. Karma is what attracts. So we could, and karma translates as action. So the action that holds us, the action that attracts us. Now you could say, well, but what about love? Love attracts us. Love pulls us. Yes, but karma attracts us and magnifies our sense of individuation. It magnifies our attachments. It magnifies our identification with our body, with our home, with our job, with our story. Love attracts us, but what it does is it attracts us to that which is beyond time and space. It attracts us to an expansion beyond ourselves, to expansion beyond the story of this moment. Love frees us from attachment identification. Now, there is the karma of physical attraction, sexual attraction, which we often verbalize as love. But it is really more the particularization of that particular attraction, that particular identification. I mean, so if God is love, the Bible suggests that, and if everything ultimately is love, then when we're freeing ourselves from negativity, when we're clearing, what we're doing is we're clearing ourselves from the hold the magnetic fields of creation have upon us. And the biggest the biggest key is to start to realize, well, where am I attached? Where am I bound? Where am I misidentifying that something of the magnetic world is essential. Where have I said I need that? When in reality it's no, I want that. You know, when you start breaking down the needs, and you go, well, okay. Okay, well, what are their true needs? Well, I guess my next breath. Yeah. Maybe water after a number of days, and food after maybe a number of weeks or months, depending on our bodies. Maybe shelter if it's cold enough or too hot. But on a higher perspective, the only need is love. Because that is God. Because when people get to that point of truly realizing God and truly realizing the total nature of love and the total essentiality of love as the one thing they can't do without, people willingly give up their breath, give up the food, even give up the shelter, even give up the puppies for love. And so the great power and the great redeemer for us always is the loving. And so the essence of clearing is getting to the loving. And part of that is you bring that loving approach as you look at that which would seem to be obstructing you or binding you, that it's obstructing you from love and binding you to form. You still love it because God, the love source, loves it all.
Okay. And yes, Donna says, no, not the puppies. Yeah. Okay, we have a couple questions, and then we'll be off shortly, so you can go on to your Saturday. We'll be here every Saturday at 9:30 a.m., at least until further notice. We have a couple questions. Let's see. And a lot of comments. And Leslie says, want versus need, good distinction. Only need is love. Love that. Thanks, both of you. Very welcome. We love barkers. Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that solidarity there with the puppies. Clearly, some of us are not completely on board with the puppies.
I'm still grieving.
Is the puppy really more valuable to you than the loving of which Michael's speaking? No, of course not. I am just joking and being lighthearted here. So I did think it was fascinating how, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course, which suggests that we will go for survival before the spirit, which is at the top of it. But actually, for those on a spiritual path, it does seem somewhat the opposite, where we would give up our breath of food, certainly shelter, for the spirit, for that loving. So it's kind of a reverse. It kind of puts Maslow's hierarchy of needs on its head, so it becomes like the tip is at the bottom of the spirit. So, but that is that's a little bit more of a rarefied perspective, I think, which of course is what we're here about, which is why we are here about, which is what we're discussing here. So apparently English is my second language. So we have a few questions. Let's see, where did I see the questions? I have no idea now. Could you say, Brenda Miller, I think Brenda is in Australia. You are up early or late, Mama. Could you say something about clearing the subconscious?
Well, subconscious as differentiated from the unconscious. Unconscious would suggest that you or I or somebody is unaware of it, therefore it's unconscious to us, meaning we are not conscious of it. Subconscious means we're conscious of it, but in a kind of more peripheral way, more like it's in the periphery of our awareness, but it's not. We're not centered on it in such a way that we can necessarily verbalize it or explain it or anything else. This will sound like a funny answer, but it's the one I'm hearing. It says the way you clear the subconscious is the same way you clear the unconscious. And I go, what's that? This is by becoming conscious of what you have subdued, meaning subconsciousness, or cover it over, make it unconscious. See, the funny thing is when who we all are spiritually is conscious of everything. One of the most baffling, bizarre truths that comes as you wake up and really wake up to God is you realize you've always been with God. And there's nothing God doesn't have access to, which means there's nothing God doesn't know. Now, as an individual, there would be limitations on how much we might focus upon or be able to express about. But there's nowhere God is not, so there's nothing God doesn't really know. So again, going back to something I said before, you can look at different techniques where people will use kinesiology or muscle testing. I know one friend of mine uses his pendulum, and other people use different things, but they're trying to somehow gain a dialogue with the subconscious, unconscious intelligence that's there, so that it will reveal to them in a way that they can then consciously know what's been interfering with them in the subconscious, unconscious way. So a lot of classic work of clearing is being able to bring to conscious awareness that which has been running us from an unconscious or subconscious place. Intuitive people do it, and kinesiologists, muscle testers trying to tap that place that does know and let it spill the beans so that we can know it here and then work with it. I think a key thing is to start from the realization that we do know. And the first step towards bridging that ability to have conscious awareness of it is to strangely affirm that you do know. And the weird thing is you do know it consciously, you just have amnesia to that conscious place of you that knows. It's kind of double talk, but you already do know. And it's when you run into somebody who can pull the information for you, it's remarkable. You go, how in the world could they know all that about me? I know all that about me, but how can they know all that about me? Well, they know all that about you because they're connecting consciously to the source that knows everything about everyone. And so I'm suggesting to you that we all not only have that as our truth, but we're stopping the process more than that we're denied the process. That's my answer for that. I'm trying to do answers that can apply to many people rather than going into the particular case of a particular person about a particular thing.
Yeah. If we would answer, like if we were doing a personal session, a one-on-one, we would answer much more specifically for that person, but we want this to be applicable to all of you. With that said, I'm going to butcher this name, CLS. CLS, are you still there? Because we'll answer on Instagram. If so, you are. Okay. So she has an interesting question. I'm going to make it a little more general than she asked it, again, so it applies to everyone. But she brings up attachment to trauma, which gave her a diagnosis, and how to be free from that, which is a fascinating question, because we do have attachment to trauma. And of course, again, that would be in the unconscious or subconscious, because consciously we're not, we wouldn't be attached to it, but we can be, addicted to drama, addicted to there's a great, and I'll let Michael answer this in a second, but there's a great saying that if you're not living big enough, if your life is not big enough, meaning you're not really fulfilling your spiritual purpose, you'll mess it up to have something to do. Who said that first,
I heard it from Russell Bishop, but he was quoting somebody else.
So we don't know who the source of it is, but so it's like we can have this addiction to overcreating, to being too busy, to trauma from our past. And I think we get attached to it because we haven't resolved it yet. We haven't brought it into the light. We haven't brought all parts of it into that healing and that light. So then we keep perseverating on it, keep focusing on it, because the soul just wants to learn, and the soul has something left to learn in that area. And of course, those are things that can be cleared and healed, but they take time, patience, loving. It can be very intricate to unravel that, because we're not just dealing with this life, we're dealing with past lives, we're dealing with other people, etc. So, what do you have to say about that?
Trauma. A couple things. I'm waiting on the one who gives me this information, because they seem to know a whole lot more than I ever do. Big reason we hold on to trauma is that this gets so complex. Let's say like this: we have a sense of our individuation, our sense of our separate self. We usually call that the ego, in a sense of me. And we actually come into the world, come as the soul, in a sense, in a way more overshadowing the form than in it. And then we learn this interface of the true nature of ourselves with this form, so that we can participate through the form and have the time-space experience. In the process of creating that interface and that sense of identification with the body, which is space, and then identification with what happens to that body, in that body, for that body, which then plays out in time. In the process of that identification, that whole thing, a story gets created. We get it, and it's the story of me, and the story of what my life is. And as that story gets created, our consciousness is building a world around that story. Because, the story is happening, but where's that story happening? Well, it's like saying, oh, here's the story of Michael. Well, here's the story of Michael in California, and so here's a spatial place to frame it, and here's his family, and here's this, and here's what Michael's life is like. And so what happens is, without realizing, we've created a story of what our life is, and what our life is, let's say, supposed to be based upon what it's been before. And we build a model inside of our consciousness of that life as something that is sequential, meaning this, then this, then this, then this. When something comes into the experience of our life that has no prior reference, or it's disruptive to the story that we've already built about what's going to happen next. It'd be like somebody going through life, and they have a model that says, this is me, and this is my home, this is my family, and here's the mommy, and here's daddy, and here's this and that, and I'm safe, and it's warm, and I get what I want. And then something comes in their life where suddenly that's changed for that person. Somebody comes into that life who's no longer safe, and no longer protective, and no longer that. And all of a sudden, experience happens that doesn't fit the story. And when that happens to somebody, there's a tremendous challenge of what to do with that. So if a person is well equipped enough in their story, that thing gets added into the story, is called, well, my life is like this, but on this event and this time, something really different happened. There was an anomaly that isn't really part of my life. So now, in the story of my life, I now have room for unexpected things, but I still go on with my story pretty much as it was. But sometimes that traumatic thing happens, and it's so traumatic that it kind of just breaks apart the whole sense of the story. Because the story is just sort of saying, well, wait a minute, I was living in my world, and I was safe, and I was protected, and I was loved. But now this thing has happened that is so counter to that it just kind of disrupts my story. except part of me needs to have a sense of continuity with my story, because that's where I get my sanity. So then what the unconscious does is it takes that incongruous experience that doesn't fit the story, and it kind of pushes it aside and creates almost a secondary story, or a secondary compartment within the story of us, to in a sense, to hold that trauma. It's almost like putting aside to solve it later, but it's almost like I don't want to interrupt my view of reality, because I need that to feel some kind of safety. So I push the trauma aside. And that may work for a while, that may work for years and years, but the nature of the consciousness is always to try and integrate everything, and eventually that trauma comes back. And later, sometimes it comes back, and you see it later in life with a person with a big issue, because the trauma's been pushing all along. So, if you can understand the core of why something is held as a trauma, is because it didn't match, it didn't have congruence with the psychological view of reality that we were holding inside at the time the trauma happened, the thing happened. And so when we're solving traumas, what we're always doing is we're helping the consciousness to adapt and to find a way to integrate that experience in such a way that the consciousness can go forward in continuity. That's a long, complicated explanation, but that's really how it happens.
And so some things to do to release that would be, of course, to get some assistance, sometimes just someone witnessing, someone that you feel safe with, that can hold a strong container of unconditional loving, and you can start to speak about the trauma, and they are witness, not only witness to your story, but witness to your feelings about the story, can be really helpful. And then, of course, bringing it, allowing it to come into more conscious awareness, so that giving a voice to where it may be trapped in our subconscious. Sometimes just relaxing and focusing in our body and seeing where it is in our body, and then giving that a voice, and gently starting to let that disowned part of us become back into the fold, and more conscious and more integrated in our story, right? So then we see that that part has really been holding the calluses and the slings and arrows and the wounding for us for all these years, and it's really a gorgeous part. It's just been gone underground, and so it's really like taking its hand and bringing it into the light. If you saw the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, where I believe it's Claire takes the hands of the leopards and brings them, is it Claire or St. Francis, brings them to the light. So it's that idea of, and again, I would recommend someone who's really strong in the light, who can hold the container for that, so then we can start to reintegrate that part and perhaps give it a new job rather than holding trauma. Maybe it's our spiritual warrior. And it starts to become more in alignment with the new story called, like, we're not perfect, we're not, unblemished, but that blemish actually adds unto us because God is learning through it all, right? And so, this is often greatly oversimplifying a significant area, but hopefully that has helped you. I don't know how to say your name, sorry, C. Elias, has helped you, helped a bit with giving it a different perspective, and all of us, because there is a level of trauma in the world right now, and in all of our lives. I don't think anyone is unblemished by what's occurring with the pandemic, the natural disasters, and I don't have to go through the list for you. But it's really a way of, rather than trying to dismiss that or divorce it or have it over in the corner over there, of like welcoming it into the light, placing your arms around all of us and integrating it into God's story. This is all well, and all shall be well, and all is utilized for the advancement of the Lord, the advancement of our souls, the advancement of love. So with that, we've gone, pull out the clock. Oh, only half an hour over what we thought we would. So, I don't know if we, you're done?
I think we should close.
You think we should close? So Patricia asked several questions. Love, I'm sorry we didn't get to your questions, but if you would be willing to come back next Saturday, I have a feeling that Mr. Hayes will be here, and we will take your questions first, Patricia, because I know you asked 3 questions which we didn't get to. I mean, at best I can, I'm just going in order of when people ask. So get your questions in early next time. And we will, you can either ask the same questions or whatever is present for you next time. Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
No, Pacific Standard Time.
No, Pacific Standard Time. Pacific, I think it's PDT, whatever that stands for. CLS says, perfectly imperfect and still beautiful, holding in the light and loving. Thank you. Yes, it reminds me, I can't remember what it's called. There's a Japanese art. It's so beautiful. It starts with a K, I can't say it. But it's where if something breaks, like a beautiful vase or an ornate piece of pottery, they put it back together, they glue it, whereas we would get super glue, and glue it so it doesn't look like it broke. What they do is they glue it with gold so that you can see the break, because now it's more beautiful because of the break. And I think that's, and said another way, Leonard Cohen, the cracks are what lets the light in. So with that, thank you for your beautiful, I don't have my cursor anymore, but thank you for your beautiful comments, all of you. Love you so much, and we will be back at 9:30 a.m. PDT next Saturday. So let's do a quick blessing. So just taking a deep breath, and again, reach up into your soul. Just stretching your fingertips, light streaming off. Exhale and let your shoulders drop down and your hands come to your heart chakra. And just feel your humanity under your heart. God's heart beating within this temple that you call the body, the sanctuary of the soul. And who we are is all that is on every level. And who we are is all that is of love. And we just ask that anything that is less than love, that was released, just be taken and transmuted as we open into God's light, God's love, God's sound, light of the Christ and the Holy Spirit for the highest good. Asking that each one present and each one to watch the recording be blessed and sanctified. We send the light on before us to prepare our way, to clear our consciousness, that we might be pure, perfectly imperfect, God-given, godly vessels of divine intent. May we each be blessed, and so be it. Amen. Blessed be. Baruch Bisham. See you next Saturday. Bye-bye.